The Isom campaign continues, and it continues to make waves as far as its sales. Now, I'm going to predict something. This is something that I believe is going to happen. And I want to say a few things about why I like the Ripperverse. I am probably going to be a different style YouTuber than you're used to listening to. YouTuber, that's weird, right? Like I have a regular job. This is not my job. But I record videos on YouTube and you watch. Some people I've noticed have what I call rage content. And this happens on the left, the right, the center. It doesn't matter. I'm going to try to stay away from that just because that's not my personality. I am open and willing to disagree with someone and keep it peaceful. Like, yeah, we disagree, but we'll see who's right and who's wrong. And for those of you who are new to my channel, who have commented in the comment section, which, I appreciate it. All the interaction, all the new subscribers, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Share the videos. I'm glad that you're excited about new things happening in comic books. I'm going to try to look for other new ventures in cartoons and comic books, like independent ventures, things that maybe are not really getting much traction. Maybe you can mention some things that you know about in the comments, things that I might be interested in and other people might be interested in that's just not getting much commentary. But I digress. Those of you who have been commenting, you'll realize that we may disagree, but I always make an effort to keep it peaceful for two reasons. One, I'm a believer and I try to execute my duty to love my neighbor as myself. And I would want someone to be able to disagree with me, keep it cordial and have a conversation. So I try to do that. I try to return that effort and be as cordial and peaceful as I possibly can. And you'll find that. I don't like really just saying, oh, I hate this or I hate that. And that's one of the reasons why even on the movies, I talk about the things that I don't like. I try to keep it even kill. I want you to be able to listen to these videos and be calm. There's a lot of videos that I watch and then, man, people can get you worked up. Look, there's things definitely worth getting excited about, but I try to keep it peaceful and keep it calm. So I'm going all over the place. Forgive me. The Ripperverse. Let's talk about this. Let's see where the Ripperverse is in sales. And I have a prediction that I want to make about something I think is going to happen with the Ripperverse. So here we go. The Ripperverse is at 1.48 million in sales, moving closely toward that $1.5 million mark where we get the short boxes. And I'm kind of excited for that. I don't know about you, but I am. This is my prediction. So Isom #2 campaign may not do as well as Isom #1. Excuse me, which is to be expected. There was a lot of excitement around the campaign initially. I would even imagine that some of Eric July's detractors actually bought the book just so they could trash it. I'm sure that happened. And you're probably not going to have everyone return. Now, what I do think is going to happen is he's going to get some new customers. There'll be new people who find out about the Ripperverse because of different channels, some small channels like mine's. Mine's is really small. Probably, I don't get nowhere near the views of other people like Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, people like that cover Eric July's channel and Eric July himself, right? He's a big deal in geekdom. I mean, there's a lot of people that probably don't want to admit that, but Eric July is a pretty big deal in geekdom, in my humble opinion. Here's what I think is going to happen. People are going to say, because this campaign didn't do as well as the first campaign, which it still might, but this is just my prediction. If it doesn't, that it's a failure. And I will remind you that Eric July has done all of this with no investors, off his own muscle, off his own hustle, and raised $1.4 million on this pre-order campaign in the first 2 days. Let that sink in. So I wanted to say that so before this narrative spreads, you understand that to expect this second campaign to do as good, make, $3.7 million, it's possible. And I think it's a good likelihood that it could go in that direction. But if it doesn't, remember, this is not a failure by any stretch of the imagination. Is this a failure? This is a success. Look at the numbers. Like, you're going to be spun narratives from people who just don't like Eric July and can't be honest. Look, there's things about Marvel and DC I wish they would correct and fix. Maybe it gets fixed in the future. Maybe it doesn't get fixed now. But I'm not delusional. I don't think Marvel and DC are going anywhere. Hopefully at some point they will course correct. Maybe they don't course correct, and maybe they collapse, but I think that is unlikely. That's just being reasonable. I still like Marvel and DC. There are characters from Marvel and DC that I've enjoyed since I was a kid. So I say that to say, as much as I don't like the direction they're headed in, I can acknowledge they're going to have successes. They're going to have a lot of losses, I believe, in the coming months, in the coming years, but I don't think they're just going away. Me and my youngest son, I have another podcast called the Geek Stacked Podcast, and we talked about Call of Duty and the problems they were having. And someone in the comments brought up a very good point. Look, Call of Duty is not going anywhere. Maybe they don't do as well next time. Possible. Maybe so, maybe not. Who knows? But this is a big franchise. And yes, they may be having some issues at this moment, but I don't think they're going anywhere. And this is what the detractors, I think, are going to want you to believe. They're going to want you to look at this pre-order campaign goal. Now, remember that. Remember, his pre-order campaign goal for the initial campaign, I'll go to that in a minute, but I think it was the exact same. Could be mistaken. $350,000 is the campaign goal. If I'm not mistaken, he was already at 600,000 within like a couple hours. 1.4 million. I think he was at 1 million in 24 hours when you account for the 22 hours that the site was down. So a day, and he's already at 1 million. It's been a week and a few days now, and he's at 1.4 million. If this track continues, he'll probably be at 2 million by next week. And maybe he does reach 3.7 million again. But do not forget, the pre-order campaign goal was $350,000. I keep wanting to get that wrong. And he's already at $1.4 million. Pretty much 1.5, a little bit before 1.5. That is a success. So before that narrative goes out, because there's going to be people that because they don't like him, they won't be able to acknowledge what is factual. Like this is a monumental success. If at the end of the campaign, he doesn't get any more than this right here, this is still a monumental success. To do something like this off your own muscle, off your own hustle with no investors, I don't think people understand how big that is. That's a big deal. Now, I wanted to go into something else today. I want to talk. Well, first, let's see. Let me go before I forget. Let's go and see what the original campaign was. So, how about that? The original campaign goal was 100,000 and he reached $3.7 million. And I don't know if you remember any of the drama from that campaign. I can't remember what payment service. Was it PayPal? I think it was PayPal that tried to hold a certain amount of his money, for whatever reason. They had their reasons. I can't remember exactly what happened. I believe I did a video on that. If you check my thumbnails, you'll probably see PayPal in the thumbnail with some Isom art, but I covered all that. That's a success. This campaign, his goal was 350 million, set it a little higher, and he still exceeded that goal. Whether he reaches this 3.7 million or not. Now, what I want to get to is this is what, like, I'm excited for several reasons. So let me make this clear for everyone who watches this video. I do not believe Isom #1 was perfect. Now, I have a different view. Look, people in the comments, you voiced your legitimate concerns from Isom #1, some shortfalls from Isom #1. I recognize that those things are true. I'm not denying that. And this is not a matter of me caping for Eric July, but there are several things I understand. When a new business starts, right? If a new restaurant opens in your neighborhood, I don't think you expect them to get everything right. I think you understand to some degree and at some level, there's going to be things on the menu that is not exactly right. Things are not going to be prepared exactly how I like them prepared. And as time moves on and as they get feedback, the restaurant gets better. I never expected Isom #1 to be perfect. I was just hopeful that it would be good. And he definitely hit the mark. And that's my stance on Isom #1. Yes, there are things that definitely need to be fixed. There are things in the panels, the way some of the writing was, but for me, it was minor things. Now, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying that is emphatic, and my opinion is fact. For me, those were minor things because I'm willing to put up with growing pains. I expect this, but here's where this gets exciting. Eric July is now learning as he's becoming a student, or he's already a student of comic book art and writers in general, but he's studying. He's pretty much the apprentice right now of Chuck Dixon. You have to realize this. The excitement around his comic book, I believe, is bringing in big names. Maybe some people who are disillusioned with the comic book industry. Maybe some people who feel like the comic book industry has gone in a direction that has separated itself from fans, which I do believe that to be the case. So let's read a little bit about Chuck Dixon and what he's working on at Ripperverse. You probably already know all of this, but I want to cover this, and I want to cover a little bit of the legend of Chuck Dixon. Who is he exactly? So Chuck Dixon will be working on writing Alphacore #1. Now, also, if you watch the live stream with Eric July and Chuck Dixon is creating an original character for the Rippaverse. This is huge. Eric July is new to writing comics as far as I know. So I think if you expected Eric July to be perfect right out the gate in his writing style and approach, I think that's a little bit unreasonable in my humble opinion. I think it's a more reasonable approach, I think it's a more reasonable approach to expect that, hey, he's going to have some growing pains. There's going to be some things that maybe he doesn't get right, but let's give him time to grow. Okay, it says, hello, Ripperverse. Earlier this year, we promised to announce 3 books for our following slate of releases. You already know that Isom #2 of the 3-part Ill-Advised series would be one of them. But we are now thrilled to be able to finally announce the title and writer for the book that will follow that. Hold on. Hold on to your butts because the legendary Chuck Dixon is joining the Ripperverse to pen Alphacore. Now, if you go to Eric July's YouTube channel and you watch the live stream with him and Chuck Dixon, you can see that Chuck Dixon is legitimately excited to work on the Ripperverse. You can almost tell there's a renewed fire in him to work on a comic book. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. If you can get a legend to be excited about writing for your comic book company, some new universe, excited to the point. Look, I understand the artistic process. I've said this before. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse and try to insert myself into everything. But when I was younger, when I was a teenager, me and my cousin, we wanted to start a comic book company. Now, this was in the 90s, a lot harder to get in. The barrier of entry now is much easier. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not easy, but it's much easier now than it was then. We drew. I used to draw pretty good. And we had original characters and stories. So I understand the excitement. Like when Image Comics was created, I was so excited. We were drawing, coming up with characters and writing stories. Like not fully flushed out, written down stories. We just had a lot of this in our heads, creating the universe, creating the stories. My cousin would create characters. I would create characters. It was exciting. And so when I saw Chuck Dixon's excitement to create a character for Ripperverse, I could tell this wasn't phony. This wasn't fake and this wasn't made up. This was legit. This man was legitimately excited to put his pen to the universe and efforts of Eric July. And I think that bodes well for this universe in general. I mean, you get to the point where you're creating a whole new character for this new universe. Yo, this is good. So I don't want to spend too much time reading this, but I did want to read this article for you from CBR about Chuck Dixon and the different things he has created, because as I said, this is a big deal. So Chuck Dixon's 10 best Batman storylines ranked. Now, when you realize that this man was involved in these storylines, I think that's when you begin to realize, yo, this dude penning for Eric July is a big deal. Like, this is not a small thing. It says Batman is a superhero that has always been popular and ahead of the curve. There are lots of incredible characters and storylines in DC Comics, but Batman is a figure that connects with people on a level that other superheroes don't. Batman, the 10 worst things Bane has ever done, ranked. So this is one of the storylines that Chuck Dixon wrote. The storyline of Bane. All right. So number 10, Batman, Black and White, The Devil's Children. Now, these are all works of Chuck Dixon. Batman, Punisher, Deadly Nights, more work of Chuck Dixon. Bane, Conquest. That's number, what was that? That was number 8. Number 7, Batman versus Predator, Blood Ties. Batman, Bruce Wayne, Murderer. Number 5, Batman Legacy. Number 4, Batman Contagion. Number 3, Batman Cataclysm. Number 2, Batman No Man's Land. And number 1, Nightfall Trilogy. Nightfall, Night Quest, and Night End. This is all the work of Chuck Dixon. I'll read a little bit about what it says about Nightfall. I didn't want to spend too much time reading everything because I'd be here forever. The whole Nightfall saga isn't Chuck Dixon's finest work, but it is one of the best Batman storylines in general. Let that sink in. And I think most Batman fans, most people who love Batman, like myself, recognize that the Nightfall saga was really good. Really good. Leaving permanent repercussions on the character and his world. The extended trilogy famously featured the introduction of Bane and how he forces Bruce Wayne into retirement by breaking his back. There's a lot more depth to the story, like Jean-Paul Valley stepping in as Wayne's replacement and damaging the Batman brand, and later becoming Azrael. The lessons that Batman learns through Bane and Valley also cause him to understand the importance of the Bat family. Yo, this is the work of Chuck Dixon. Why did I go to that? I went to that so you understand. I was gonna go to some more works of Chuck Dixon, but I think with that you get my point. This is not a small fry. And this is a person that Eric July now has on the team writing for the Ripperverse. So look, you may have issues with Eric July's writing style. You may have issues with paneling and the way Isom #1 played out. But you have to understand, for all intents and purposes, as a comic writer and creator at this point, Eric July is an amateur, and I think most people forget that. Now, he's not an amateur in the sense of his knowledge of comics, his love for comics, but as far as creation, this is all new. You got to give him some room to grow. I will say this, and for me, this bodes well of Eric July. For him to be brand new, a brand new writer, brand new creator, and to come up with something like Isom that really, I'm not gonna say at the very moment it rivals DC and Marvel, but the fact that it has the potential to should tell you something. He's onto something, and you gotta give the man time to cook, because I think he is cooking up a delicious meal that comic book fans will enjoy for many years to come, and we need to give him some time.